side offensive zone looking for Johansson. Sillinger jumps out of the box, 5-on-5 hockey now. Boldy. Right side offensive zone, Matt Boldy. Fires. Matt Boldy with the first goal of the new season. And late in the first, the Wild have a 1-0 lead.
Speak of the devil, Matt Boldy in studio here with Kevin Fallness and myself. This is Michael Russo from The Athletic, and that was Joe O'Donnell right here on the Fan and the Wild Radio Network. And, I always wonder, I know that you're a professional athlete, you've had hat tricks, and obviously you've had 60 goals the last couple of years. But like after a game like last night, opening night win, you factor in all 3 goals. I mean, is it trouble getting to sleep? Like, how do you decompress from a game like that? Because sometimes I feel like you got to be high as a kite.
Yeah, it's tough. It's every game. It's tough to get to sleep. You're so fired up and kind of just go for a few hours there. So it's kind of hard to wind down and get to sleep.
There was thought from the bloggers out there, the pundits, that you might be rusty. You hadn't played a game for real since April. And I know training camp and preseason isn't for real, but there was talk about you maybe being rusty. So much for that.
Yeah, it's I don't know. In my mind, hockey's hockey. You show up and you play your game and within the system and hard and put your best effort forward. So I think that was kind of my mindset going in. I felt good and confident, so it wasn't too much of a worry for me.
The Wild, I remember, I think we talked to you Saturday, which was actually, I don't know if you were throbbing in pain when you were talking to us and had a great poker face, which if that's the case, I don't want to ever play poker with you. And then on Monday, they put out the release, they tweet out in the middle of practice that you're week to week with a lower body injury. Obviously, we saw that you weren't out there. But then 45 minutes later, John Hynes clarifies, well, we still anticipate him being ready for the season. In that 45 minutes, were you like, wait a minute, am I out like 4 to 6 weeks here? Or what? Or did you know that like you were going to get yourself ready?
Yeah, I felt like I was going to be all right. It wasn't anything too serious, so just kind of a bugging thing, and luckily it kind of healed up and was good to go for last night.
I know you'd rather have been in training camp and preseason and playing those games and stuff, but does this give you a hall pass to say I don't need preseason and training camp next year? Because it sounds like it was a hell of a training camp. He worked these guys pretty hard, but maybe you got a red card and say, I think I'm going to sit these out.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to win that battle. So I'm going to be ready for training camp next year, I'm sure.
We're talking about Matt Boldy, had a goal and 2 assists yesterday, 3 shots on goal on an incredible line with Marcus Johansson and Joel Eriksson Ek. And I asked you last night about John Hynes. And look, I know you love Dean, and I'm sure you've loved every coach that you've ever had. I mean, you had a legendary one over at BC. But some players just seem to thrive under a coach, and this is no small sample size anymore. John gets here, and you score on the breakaway on his debut. You have 28 goals. You're a point-a-game player last year under John. Then you go to the Worlds under John and lead the entire tournament in scoring. Is there something about just the chemistry that you two have that allows you to have the freedom to play with your instincts?
Yeah, I think I have a lot of respect for Heinze and the way he coaches and how willing he is to let me play my game within the system. So I think we have kind of a good connection there where we both trust each other and are able to kind of build that connection with each other in a way that, like I said, allows me to play freely within our system. Playing USA Hockey at the National Development Program and him being there, I feel like a lot of those coaches kind of adopt similar stuff. So when he first got here, I was comfortable, and obviously that goes a long way within his system. And it just got off to a good start, and I think we're just kind of growing that relationship.
Plus, he's from Rhode Island, you're from Boston, you speak the same language.
Exactly, so. We're close.
When you look at last night, we talked to Zuccarello a little bit in the postgame. I think John even said it as well, that you guys weren't happy with the full 60 minutes. There was stuff left out on the table, and there's definitely room to build. But I would think the line combination of yourself, Marcus Johansson, and Joel Eriksson Ek, that's a wonderful first effort. What did you think of the line chemistry and how you guys started the first game of the season?
Yeah, it was great. I think, I love playing with those guys. Eki has been more of a constant, I'd say, lately. He's just so good. He's so big and strong. You know exactly what you're getting from him every night. He's never going to surprise you with a bad effort. And JoJo's just so dynamic. You give him the puck and he just takes off, makes plays, sees the ice so well. And when he's playing confident and comfortable, he's just a point machine out there making plays everywhere. So those two are absolutely awesome to play with, so I'm pretty lucky.
Go back to your goal. Joe just described it coming out of the break. When you take us through your mindset, what you see from your eyes from the circle, you're shooting at the net, and Joel Eriksson Ek is putting his big body right in front of the goaltender. Do you realize that he's taking away his eyes? Are you just flinging it towards the net, or is there some method to the madness there?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit method to the madness, but it's not. I definitely wasn't shooting to score that goal by any means. I think I've learned that when Ecky's down there and there's just one guy, you give him the puck and you let him go to work. So that was more of the thought process. It was an incredible screen. We were watching it after, and he had no idea where it was.
Yeah.
It was not a very good hard shot or anything like that. So he gets free parking there every game. So
yeah, what is it about Eriksson Ek? Because I mean, it almost feels like a lot of times he's like the afterthought when we talk about all the great players on this team. You, Faber, Kaprizov, but you look at Ek and how he's just consistently become one of the top all-around centers in this game. He just drives opposing goalies and defensemen batty.
Yeah, he's a stud. Like you said, he doesn't get the respect he deserves. Honestly, I don't think he wants it, but. He's just so effective. He's arguably our most valuable player in every aspect of the game. He's the first over for our kill. Every important face-off, he's the guy that you look to. End of games. And then on top of that, he scores goals, makes plays, has such an impact on the game. So that's how I look at him. He's such a big part to our team and our success.
Well, we talk about the team leaving something on the table in the full body of work. You got the victory, and a lot of that was because of your goaltender. How good was Philip Gustafsson in game number one? I think officially they gave him 31 saves, but especially in that final 15 seconds, he was fantastic.
Yeah, he played really good last night, I think. Just his compete level, his want to be unbelievable every night is great. I think he's so smart. He's so quick to make reads and kind of, like I said, read what the play is going to happen and be there so early and be able to set himself. So it's hard to score when a goalie's looking at you square on. They're so good, but he played awesome.
Seattle Kraken in town tomorrow night. Then you go on a 7-game road trip. How do you pack for a 7-game, 17-day road trip? At least we're coming back for couple days next week, but a lot of days off in Florida, a lot of days off in Pittsburgh. I assume you being the elite golfer you are, might be bringing your clubs.
No chance. You're not bringing your clubs, are you?
I don't know.
Hartman is. We know that.
Is he good?
No, I don't know.
It's a long trip for sure. I think it'll be good for the guys just to kind of get together. You spend a lot of time together running a road, whether it's the planes or buses or dinners and stuff like that. So I think that'll be really important to us kind of growing as a team and coming together.
I love golf. I suck at it. Are you cocky enough to say you're the best golfer on the team?
No. I would say I compete with Marcus Johansson.
So it's the two of you are right there?
He's really, really good. And we're probably even. I've beaten him a few times. He's beaten me a few times, but I golf a lot more than him. He's got 2 young kids, so it's hard for me to say that I'm better than him when he golfs 5 times a summer and I golf 5 times a week. So,
what are your favorite courses in the cities?
I belong to Olympic Hills in Eden Prairie. That place is awesome. I love it. You can play it so many different ways, longer, shorter. Greens are crazy. It's awesome. They do such a good job. I love Windsong. It's so hard. Spring Hill's awesome, so pretty and stuff like that. So those places are great.
Who's the golfer on the team that thinks they're good that really is not very good at all?
I don't know if we have one, to be honest with you. I'd say Brock, but he doesn't think he's good. But like, he just bought a brand new set.
Of course,
told himself he was going to golf all summer long and played like 10 times.
we brought up to Dean that Kaprizov's been golfing. He's like, Kaprizov doesn't even know how to hold a golf club. Great Dean line yesterday. He was telling about playing golf with his coaching staff, and Nicholas Backstrom is the all-time winningest goalie in Wild history. So Dean's 250 yards from the green. He's like debating whether to lay up or go for the green. He decides, I'm going to lay up. It lays up, hits a good shot. But as he's walking toward his ball, he's just, moaning that, calling himself a lot of words that he had no guts. And Backy, who's got the driest sense of humor, walks by him and goes, let me guess, we're going to play 2 defensemen in overtime. So that's become the biggest thing.
Good.
Let me ask you, I know, like, every time we talk to you, even last night, we're asking about, your goals for this season. It's infamous now that Bill Guerin went on Spit and Chicklets, predicted 50 and 50. And you just said, I want to win. And I know that is your goal after last year not making the playoffs. But, last night you have Guerin watching. You have Chris Kelleher, who's his assistant GM. That's a big part of USA Hockey. It's really early that they got to pick the rosters for the 4 nations and then obviously the Olympics next year. Is that, like, how big of a goal would that be for you to be part of this tournament starting in Montreal and Boston to elevate yourself to that status of being a true star American player when there can only pick 13 forwards?
Yeah, it's obviously a goal. I think you'd be crazy not to have that as a goal in the back of your head. So as much as I think about it, I don't think it's that much. I think right now my focus is playing for the Wild, obviously, and trying to play well and get wins. Like I said, this is a big part of who I am as a person, just this team and this organization and wanting to do well and succeed. So I think there's definitely the goal to make that team. And like I said, you'd be crazy not to have that goal. But like I said, I just want to win with these guys.
Well, let's focus on the here and now then. Tomorrow night, you're home against the Seattle Kraken. Mike said you guys are on the road the rest of the month. You got that first win. You started the homestand and the season on a bright note, took down the Blue Jackets 3-2. Is there added importance to tomorrow night, considering the fact that we know how the last year began? There's importance to getting off on the right foot this year. You got another home game. What's your expectations tomorrow night against the Kraken?
Yeah, they're a really good team. Really hard, fast, forechecking team. So we have to come out here and play well. It's never going to be a perfect game, but we got to play hard and simplify a bit more. But it's an important game. I think a lot of guys understand we won our first game last year, and then the next handful of games didn't follow. So there's definitely a lot of expectation within our room to kind of change that narrative.
Well, Matt, really appreciate you coming upstairs, especially after a big game and right before practice as well. Lots of luck tomorrow night. We'll see you on the road trip. You'll be getting tired of me. This is just game 1 of 82. But at least Fallness doesn't travel.
No, I don't. No, well, I'll be here watching the Patriots by myself.
All right.
Yeah,
Good luck with that.
That is a Wild star in the making, Matt Boldy. We'll be right back here on The Fan. This is Mike Russo and Kevin Fallness.
You're listening to The Fan. Comedian and podcaster Tom Segura is hitting the road. Catch him when he brings his Come Together tour to the Xcel Energy Center Friday, April 18th. Don't miss out on this hilarious night of comedy. Tickets on sale now. Full details, KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
Back here on The Fan.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Fallness just had to tell me you want to do your show. I was just like writing things and planning the rest of my day and all that stuff. Elliot Friedman said the joke about me taking the picture of Anthony's bald spot, which God forbid he actually would have one.
No chance.
But it made me realize I wanted to tell you the story. So I think a lot of Wild fans that follow me on Twitter know that Kevin and I like to get back and forth going after each other on Twitter. It's a fun thing. He loves to take pictures of my bald spot.
I don't do that on
just
purpose.
Absolutely torments me. You've done it for years. So in January, I'm having my hair cut, and always make the self-deprecating joke to whoever my hairstylist is, like about my bald spot. She goes, "Oh, you should try this Active. It's like this, like hair thickening shampoo or whatever." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'll try it." Extremely expensive, by the way. So I start using it. I've been using it since January. So a couple days ago, I'm getting my hair cut, my pre-season haircut, and this other hairstylist goes to me. She's like, "Oh, are you using Active?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she goes, I'm like, "Can you notice?" Like, I was like all excited. And she goes, "Yeah, I see little sprouts." Sprouts. Little baby hair, she called it. And I'm just thinking, and then she puts she decides to now take the mirror, put it behind me so I can see what it looks like, and it looks no different. And I'm just thinking, if there are sprouts back there, it's going to be like 50 more years before I have a full head of hair.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So, yeah, and I totally blame you on this. Matt Boldy, so, great interview with Matt. And it's funny because before the season started, one of his golfing buddies who I know well, who a lot of people actually know, told me, he goes, "You're not going to kind of believe the way that Matt's grown up and how he's 23 years old and how he's just become this professional and all this stuff." And it does feel like right now, this is sort of the beginning of a guy that he's no longer a young player. He wants to take license of being a star. And I didn't want to bring this up to him because I don't want to compare Kaprizov and Boldy to McDavid and Draisaitl because they're not.
Right.
But the one thing that the two of them have is they support each other. They're best friends. They live by each other in Ontario. They are using each other to lift the status of the Oilers to the point that last year, let's be honest, if Draisaitl is healthy, they probably win the Cup, but they come within one goal of winning the Cup, let alone one win. And I think that Matt realizes, like we see him on the ice after practice every day with Kaprizov. I think that he realizes that they could be this tag team here for years. And then suddenly if you add a young Brock Faber and a Rossi to that core and you bring in, Riley Heidt and Urhoff and all this stuff, they just draft Zed Bouillon, Wallstedt, that now they could have the makings of something. I think Matt's starting to realize just like, I'm no longer a young player. Like when Bill Guerin's saying that, I gave this guy $7 million a year because I think he's a 50-50 guy. That says something about him, and his talent level.
You can see where this franchise is headed, and it's going in the right direction. That's why it would be so catastrophic to think of the unthinkable with Kaprizov leaving in 2 years. I really think, I trust in Bill Guerin. I know Craig Leopold, definitely has his back, and it feels like everything's moving in the right direction. So to watch Matt Boldy continue to develop, and you talk about potentially scoring 40 goals and, even pushing the pace further than that, that's fantastic for this franchise. And to think of where this franchise was not that long ago when we were banking on the Granlunds and the Zuckers and so on and so forth, and now to have two legitimate superstars. I mean, Kaprizov is a game changer. Boldy's not that far behind. And to have these two guys as your cornerstones of the franchise, and then talk about Faber on the back end, Wallstedt, the potential backbone of this franchise for many years to come once he gets that opportunity, and then the other guys that are coming down the line. It's good stuff. It's fun.
One thing that you said earlier in the show that I wanted to talk to you about is you talked about, Johansson. And I don't know if you said it on the show or we were just shooting the breeze about it, but Johansson knowing full well that Liam Ogren's behind him. And
sure,
that's the one thing coming into this season that I actually really like about the roster is, remember last year the cap pain was so bad. And it is bad this year as well. But they could only start the season with 21 players. They immediately got hurt, like starting with Boldy and Goudreau in Toronto in Game 2. Goligoski before practice in Montreal, then suddenly they were in just absolute cap mire. But they had nobody to scare these guys last year. Like now, don't think that like John Merrill doesn't know that Declan Chisholm and Damon Hunt are right behind him, that Marcus Johansson and Freddie Goudreau don't know that Liam Gogren's right behind him, that Philip Gustafson and Marc-Andre Fleury don't know that Jesper Wallstedt's right behind him. It just seems like right now there's that internal competition that could drive a team, and that's why I don't think it's a shock that Johansson had such incredible... not incredible. His two last preseason games were outstanding, and he had a great opening night.
Yeah, incredible might be too much, but he did play well, and especially when you consider the body of the work last week. And you guys had Johansson in the postgame in the locker room, and he admitted to it. The fact that he's coming into this season with something to prove. He does. He didn't play well last year, and he'll be the first one to admit it.
Contract year,
But now he's coming into this season, taking it seriously in training camp, in the games that he got in the preseason, and game one was great. And, the combination of him, Jules Eriksson, and Matt Boldy, it's only one game. You can't build a season off of just one game, but it's a start. And now build on it in game number 2, and let's see where it goes on the road trip. But fantastic start for him, and he needs it. If he wants to be in this lineup, and especially if he wants to stay in a top 6 role, it's incumbent upon him to continue to build upon that.
What do you think of the Wild having their morning skates here? It's kind of interesting. So that's a big change this year. They got all the bells and whistles here. They got the pregame meals here. And obviously this is going to be a pain for you and I who have to run to the arena to get to the visiting team. It's going to suck for Tony DeCosta, Matt Benz, and Cliff Halstead, but who cares about them? But the one thing that John Hines did kind of point out yesterday too is that when you're the home team, you have a 10:30 skate, and the visitors team starts at 11:30. And the rule in the NHL is you have to be off the ice at 11:15 so they could resurface and have it ready for the visiting team. So what it does now with all these extra players is it doesn't allow them the ability at XL Energy Center for morning skates to skate their extra guys. If you have an injured guy, to rehab them, you have to go get them out on the ice at 8 a.m., 9 a.m. before your skate. So it's a kind of interesting change this year.
You'd know better than me, but this isn't a new thing in the national. There's other teams that have their morning skates in the practice facility.
I'll tell you when it really stunk was during the Stanley Cup final when the Oilers were out at the arena, which is way away from Fort Lauderdale Beach, and the Panthers practice facility is Fort Lauderdale Beach. Luckily, it was me, Pierre LeBrun, and Chris Johnson, so we were able to split it up. But if you're one beat writer covering you, it's impossible. You can't go to both.
This is what I tell people. XL Energy Center, there's not a better place on earth to watch a hockey game, and there's just no way around it. The sightlines are fantastic. The in-arena experience is awesome. The underbelly, the guts of that thing, was built in the year 2000. There's been very few updates, whereas this was built in the last 5 years. And TRIA is now state-of-the-art. And when you compare what they have here compared to what they have at XL Energy Center, I'm surprised it took them this long to make this move. So now they come here and they got all the bells and whistles. They got all the fantastic amenities, and then they still get the game experience of playing in one of the best buildings on earth. So, I think in years to come, they're going to figure out a way to update the underbelly and the guts of XL Energy Center. But right now, there's no comparison. It's night and day between TRIA Rink, the guts of this place, compared to the X.
Refreshing that it's hockey season. Gophers start tonight in Vegas. PWHL team, who, by the way, Mike Murray's wife is the GM of that team. They just released their training camp roster. But when we come back, I'm wilded out. Is that the right word? Wilded?
No, that's probably not the way to say it.
We'll just call it wilded out. I'm wilded out. We're going to turn our attention to the Minnesota Vikings, the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Minnesota Lynx, who had an unbelievable comeback win last night. And we'll talk about maybe storming Gophers fields and things like that. With the Pioneer Press's Dane Mizutani, former Wild beat writer, now the Vikings beat writer for the Pioneer Press, but a absolute basketball aficionado as well. Dane Mizutani coming back after the break. This is Michael Russo on The Fan. Athletic back here at the Fan at TRIA Rink, hour and a half before practice. Thanks to Elliot Friedman and Matt Boldy coming on. Seattle Kraken getting ready right behind us. Looking forward to watching them practice after the Wild today. My buddy Brandon Montour plays for them. I bonded with him for the last couple of years covering the Florida Panthers playoff runs. But we've talked enough hockey so far. We're going to get back to it, of course. But the Vikings writer extraordinaire for the Pioneer Press, an old friend that covered the Wild for a long time. I remember him back when he was in college. He still owes me money, I think, from a concert that I took him to dinner at. Dane Mizutani, how are you?
I'm good. How you doing, Russo?
Remember that? I think we went to Butcher and the Boar. I think he skipped down the bill.
Oh, yeah. I've skipped out on many of bills with you. But you got it.
You skipped out on a couple bills in Nashville, too, there, Dave Maserati. You still owe me for that night.
Don't you think we should tweet out the video of Dane?
No, how about we don't do that? No.
So Dane, his day job is covering the Minnesota Vikings for the Pioneer Press, but he is a jack of all trades, and basketball fanatic covers the loves the Wolves and the Lynx. And I know you were at the Wild game last night, but my Lord, the Minnesota Lynx last night, game 1 of the WNBA Finals, are getting beat badly. And for the first time in Finals history, a team trailed by 15 with 5 minutes left and wound up winning the game. Game 2 Sunday in New York. About what a victory for the Lynx, who it's becoming old hat. Just another potential championship on its way.
Yeah, it was crazy. I'm at the Wild game, sitting in the 200 level. Pretty locked in on the game. It was a fun one last night, but I find myself kind of late. The section is kind of clamoring. Everyone's on their phone checking Twitter because the Lynx are doing this thing that's never been done before. You mentioned, I think they were down 15 in the final 5 minutes, the first team ever to come back and win the game. Pretty big plays all around. Courtney Williams hit a huge 3 and got fouled, completed the 4-point play late. But what this thing all boils down to is Napheesa Collier is slowly establishing herself not only as an incredible elite two-way player in the league, but maybe the best player in the league. And that's crazy because Asia Wilson, who plays for the Las Vegas Aces, has kind of had that honor and that crown for 3-4 years now. But Napheesa Collier has really proven through this year and everything she's been able to do that she's right there with her. So if she wins the title this year, I think you got to give her the crown.
Dane, is it a surprise how fast Cheryl Reeve has been able to turn this thing around, considering, what a dynasty this franchise was for so many years? You figured there's going to be the other side of that circle. They're going to just, go in the down spell. And I think they did hit a little bit of some turbulence there. But to be back in the WNBA Finals this fast, and I know they've got some great players there, Napheesa Collier right there at the top, but is there a surprise that she's been able to turn it around this quick?
I think the turnaround happening this year was very surprising. I think that at some point, because Napheesa Collier is such a good player and they have been drafting well and kind of stacking those pieces, that it was going to happen at some point, maybe not necessarily it ending in the finals, but that the thing was going to turn around after, like you mentioned, a few down seasons. But the fact that it had happened this year, I think it came as a surprise to pretty much everyone, except for maybe the players that play for the Lynx. I think Vegas had them as 50-1 to win the WNBA title before this season started. So that kind of describes, how they were perceived, at least externally. But it goes back to Napheesa Collier. Like, you don't take this gigantic leap as a team unless you have an elite player kind of stirring the whole thing for you. So she's taken another step forward in her rise as a WNBA player. They made some shrewd moves this offseason, all of which have seemed to work out. And they play just a brand of basketball that's really, really fun. It's team ball moves constantly. And in a league full of super teams, basketball in general, NBA, WNBA, the Lynx are not that. And they're a super team in the other sense, where they're just a really good team. And a lot of pieces that work together perfectly. And here they are, 2 wins away from hoisting the trophy again.
Amazing. Dana, we're talking with Dane Mizutani from the Pioneer Press. Not to get into the weeds on sports writing, but can you imagine covering that game and having a file at the gun? I mean, because the way it works, in sports writing is like, look, I mean, you're filing the second it's over so you can get it online and for the early editions of your newspaper. And so in a game like that, you're writing a loss. And I know Fallness likes to rip on us and make fun of us when games turn at the last second, but there's no more harrowing experience. And I remember when I covered the Miami Heat, I found covering the Heat, covering basketball, very hard. The way a game can turn at the last second. And I can't imagine having to sit and write that and just make sense of it.
It's one that you just kind of file at the end and just probably say, like, I have no idea what I wrote because you're just changing everything at the last minute. So I can't imagine it. I know Fallness probably has some takes on what it's like to be a blogger and how tough it is. But man, that would have been a tough one last night, man. I can't even imagine.
I love it when you guys work out your backspace and your delete button on your little keyboard.
There are 3 or 4 that go into my head right off the hop. One was a game in Arizona where the Wild rallied back last seconds, and I remember I'm rewriting my story. Did not watch one single goal live and didn't see the replays and still wrote the story. One was a game in New York where the Wild were up like 4-1 in the third period, and of all players, Matt Zuccarello ruined my night, completely turned the game around, and the Wild blew that game. The other one, a game where the Wild rallied here in Minnesota, the Chicago game with Josh Harding and net. Latendresse scored late. And then the 2014 Game 7, where the Wild 5 different times that game rallied back from a goal down, and then Niederreiter scores the winner in overtime. But it is hard. I remember Wes Walls once asked me, when he was playing, Dane, I know I've told you this story, but I bet you haven't told Fawn this, but Walls was clearly pissed with something that I wrote in the strip. And he comes up, I'm in the locker room just the next day loitering, and he calls me over and goes, "Let me ask you a question. Do you watch the games?" And I look at him and I go, "Not the third period." And he looked at me like he didn't understand until he got in the press box and started calling games and actually saw what it's like.
Yeah, that's great. Walsey, I can see Walsey calling you out like that too.
Dane, Dane is the jack of all trades at the Pioneer Press. But speaking of jacks of all trade, Jace Frederick, your colleague, is covering a high school football game the night that Cat is traded to the New York Knicks. And this guy not only filed that story of the high school football game, but sat in his car writing the Cat story. What was your reaction to the Cat news?
Well, first of all, my reaction to Jace being a workhorse that night was we would be lost without that guy. You're not wrong. He ran from the press box down to the field, interviewed high school football players, high school coaches, ran back to his car, wrote that story from his hotspot, and then put up like a 600-700 word piece on the Karl-Anthony Towns trade, which, by the way, was just so far out of left field. It was like the biggest news, sports news on the planet at that moment in time, and Jace is covering a high school game at the same time. It's amazing.
Yeah.
What do I think of the Cat news? I was stunned. I think nobody really saw it coming. If you did, you're lying. I was genuinely disappointed on a human perspective, for Karl-Anthony Towns. This guy's been a consummate professional, awesome face of the franchise on and off the court. And it really kind of felt like he turned a corner last year and proved to everyone after years of scrutiny that you can win a title with me on the team. And I think from a human perspective, again, if the Wolves were going to get over that hump and win a title, I wanted it to be with Karl-Anthony Towns in town. He's put in the work. He's been through the dog days with this franchise, just unspeakable personal tragedy, and he's continued to kind of wear his heart on his sleeve through it all. So from a human perspective, I was bummed when that trade went down. From a basketball perspective now, a hard pivot, I don't think it's going to be that big of a loss, because I think the pieces that they've added, it's hard to kind of separate the forest from the trees when such a big trade happens. But Dante DiVincenzo is an elite role player. It's probably not even fair to call him a role player because he's so good. He's someone who's going to slide right in and close for the Wolves. And he's just a tremendous player by himself. Julius Randle, kind of a polarizing guy, but he, in theory, can give you 75-80% of what Karl-Anthony Towns could give you. And kind of a hidden piece of this all is this is a bet on Naz Reid. If Karl-Anthony Towns stays in town, the Wolves basically have to give up Naz Reid next year. Now they can work out an extension. I'm sure they will at some point with a guy they really believe in. So this gave you more roster flexibility in the long run. And I don't think it really hurts you that much in the short run.
And I mean, it illustrates this is Anthony Edwards' team, and for good reason. He's a superstar. I'm wondering, I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. I'm anxious to check it out. Starting 5 on Netflix. A number of stars in the NBA will be featured, including Anthony Edwards. Have you checked it out, and what are your initial thoughts on what this is going to be like?
I haven't watched it in full, but I'm on TikTok. I see all the basically, if you're on TikTok, you can just see all these viral clips of the best
you're on
moments.
TikTok to see all Taylor Swift stuff. We know why you're on TikTok.
And I've seen just Anthony Edwards' personality come across. Not surprising that it would. His charisma is off the charts. I'm excited. I like these things. It was cool when they did quarterback with Kirk Cousins. receiver with Justin Jefferson. Now we're kind of getting a peek behind the curtain in the NBA. So these are always good. It's good for fans. It's good for even like us who are around the team and we think we know. But there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that we don't know. So it's an illuminating thing. It's really cool that they get the access, and I will be checking it out at some point.
We're talking with Dane Mizutani, the former Hawaiian hockey writer for the Pioneer Press, now covers the Minnesota Vikings. And let's turn our attention to the 5-0 Vikings. I'm sure this is exactly what you predicted in your preseason picks in the Pioneer Press.
No. I actually didn't think they were going to be as bad as some people thought. Like I saw some, national pundits, to use a word I was listening earlier. I saw some national pundits saying the Vikings were going to be the worst team in the league. I just never saw it. I thought they were too talented across the board. I had them pegged right around 9 wins, right around 500. They could still get there. I mean, there's still time, but like right now, did I ever predict a 5-0 start? No. Did I predict for them to be legitimately one of the best teams in the league? No. Like this has all come as quite a surprise. But I think it speaks to, the culture they have in place. Sometimes that can be a buzzword. I think it actually matters with the Vikings and just the coaching job that Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores on the defensive side have done across the board. And then obviously the players, everybody that's needed to step up has. And then that's how you get to 5-0 and kind of shock the world and doing it.
Perfect time for the bye week, too, especially considering how Aaron Jones went down against the Jets in London. What's your injury report on him? What's the latest on Hawkinson? And then what's the latest on Addison? Are they throwing the book at this guy, or is he going to be able to escape out of the season and have to answer that call at some point in the summer?
Yeah, I'll touch on Addison first. He has a court date at some point in October, sometimes and oftentimes actually in sports across the board, not just the NFL. Athletes tend to get those court dates pushed back, kind of kicking the can down the road and dealing with it later. I kind of expect that to happen. We haven't seen any movement from the LA courts, and has he actually done that? But until the legal process plays out, Jordan Addison's not going to be suspended. And I think the goal probably from his team is let's let the legal process play out later and then just continue to kick it down the road. So no real update with when he's going to miss time, if he's going to miss time due to a suspension. Now with Aaron Jones, it's a week-to-week thing, according to Kevin O'Connell, and week-to-week's obviously worse than day-to-day. But I've said this a couple times on certain radio hits that I've done this week, or just even talking with friends. Like Aaron Jones, is week to week, but the bye week comes at a good time, and he just generally speaking, you can tell by a guy's spirit if an injury is serious and is going to keep him out a really long time. And he seemed in good spirits walking off the field in London. He went to the Lynx game as soon as he got back to Minnesota. So I don't think this is something that's going to linger long term. And certainly the Vikings can't afford for it to linger long term because he's been such an important part of their offense. So they'll hope to get him back, if not next Sunday, then in short order after that. And then TJ Hawkinson, I think the target date is November 2nd. It's a home game against the Colts. The only reason it's not sooner is because the Vikings play the Detroit Lions coming out of the bye, and then they have a quick turnaround, fly to LA to play the Rams on Thursday night. So if he's not ready for next Sunday against his former team, Hawkinson speaking, I don't know if you want to rush the process and throw him back onto the field on a Thursday night primetime game, which those things can generally be pretty clunky as is. So I think November 2nd, it's Sunday at home against the Colts. That probably makes sense. But I also know TJ Hawkinson has basically been pushing to get back on the field for as long as he's been out. So he'll be pushing that timeline for sure.
And speaking of Addison, I think that I think his court date was actually moved to December 12th yesterday. I wanted to ask you about Addison. It felt like last game really turned on that, that pass on the fourth down the sideline where they, really could have kicked the field goal there. The week before, the muff punt at the end of the half. it does feel like some of these games have completely turned in the second half because of little decisions that are hurting them. Yeah, I mean, do you foresee that this is going to be a problem? Because I did watch your podcast the other day after the game, and it felt like you felt like that was a bad little decision there.
Yeah, I think the past 2 weeks, the way that the games have closed out, and the flip side of this, before I even say the first part, is like building a lead allows you like some wiggle room. So the Vikings obviously deserve credit for building the lead against the Packers, building the lead against the Jets, to give them some wiggle room if they were to hit the skids at some point, which they did in back-to-back weeks. But what I will say is, like, expectations have kind of changed for this team now, and no longer are they just this plucky team that can be competitive week in, week out. I think the expectations are this is one of the best teams in the league with a legitimate chance to contend come playoff time. So because of that, I think it is okay to nitpick and be scrutinize certain decisions, and the ability to close out a game, like to keep your foot on the gas, is a skill. And I think it's a skill the Vikings are still learning, how to process. And we saw it against the Packers. We saw it against the Jets. With Kevin O'Connell, I think there's a want to be aggressive and show like a belief in his team by continuing to push the ball downfield and kind of try and deliver the knockout blow with a long, deep shot downfield. Sometimes a knockout blow can be just continuing to move the chains, continuing to milk time off the clock, and not necessarily go ultra conservative. But there's a happy medium between ultra conservative and what the Vikings have done, in victory over the past 2 weeks, but it hasn't looked great in the way they've done it. So certainly room to improve, and I think it does start at the top. And to Kevin O'Connell's credit, he did say that as well, like heading into the bye. The players have a lot to work on, but he admitted himself he also has a lot to work on. So it is definitely going to be something that they need to improve on. You can't build leads and then let teams back into the game or let teams hang around against the better teams in the league. It's going to come back to bite you at some point.
Hey, which Gopher team is going to show up tomorrow at the Rose Bowl? The one that pooped the bed in the second half against Iowa, or the one that pushed Michigan to the limits and then shocked Southern California, which you know very well because Mike tells me you rushed the field at Huntington Bank Stadium.
Yet again.
I did. I think I've rushed the field now like 4 or 5 times, and I was there at the game with my girlfriend. I'm like, if they win, we're going. And she's like, where are we going? I said, we're going onto the field, and so we're on the field after the game, and she goes, "Do they do this after every win?" I said, "Kind of, basically, but it feels like it." I have no idea who's going to show up tomorrow. Like, this team is so Jekyll and Hyde.
But UCLA is bad, right?
I'm still watching. I'm still going to be parked in front of a TV watching, and it's it was fun. Last Saturday was a lot of fun.
I assume you're going out to the Rose Bowl since it's a bye week just to storm the field again, right?
I will not be there. I will be comfortably at home. But man, a couple more wins and maybe we can start thinking Rose Bowl down the road.
Oh, boy. He made some comment on the Fan the other day about him being 32 years old, and I feel like I have trouble getting out of bed. I'm like, well, that's because of the 20 beers he had the night before and rushing football fields and stuff. Like, you're not getting that old. That's why, like, maybe you got to look at other things in your life that's actually making you feel like in pain getting out of bed. You're not my age. All right.
We've cut back.
Pump up your podcast. I watched it the other day. You should have been writing, by the way. I'm sure the Pioneer Press were waiting for your article, but you decided to hop right on YouTube.
I hop on weekly with Matthew Collar. It's his YouTube channel, his podcast, Purple Insider. He does an awesome job. I think he's the only beat writer who's there day in, day out doing a daily podcast for the Vikings. So definitely subscribe to him. Follow his work. He's amazing. But he is, me and him get together after every post game and kind of break it down. It's a fun way to kind of do it. And for me, it helps like kind of organize my thoughts after NFL games, which can be crazy. And sometimes it does help to just kind of talk through it for an hour in real time. So it's a fun thing. And he does an awesome job. So everyone make sure you're following him.
It's such a great point to talk out a story. Sometimes it actually helps.
We were supposed to say hi from Sickman, by the way, too, Dane. Yeah, because I'm sure all the listeners want to know what Aaron Sickman thinks. But hello from Aaron Sickman. We all miss
everyone back there. Tell him I said hello as well.
I was a little ticked with Collier because I asked in the chat section the other day, knowing that you were on the field like the night before, and had to wake up to cover an 8:30 football game. I'm like, Dane looks a little tired. Ask him what he did last night, but he never did that. So I was a little ticked. That is Dane Mizutani from the Pioneer
Dave Maserati.
Yeah, from the Pioneer Press. Thanks as always, Dane. Lots of enjoy your. Let's see, it's October 20th. The Vikings host the Lions, I believe, right?
Yep. Should be a good one.
Yep, there you go. This is Michael Russo from The Athletic. I'm in Kevin Fallness' studio. What a saint Kevin is. When we come back, we'll have a little open segment. If you want to call the show, 1-800-320-5326. You can ask us about the Wild. We also have still to come Dan Hayes from The Athletic to talk about the big Twins news of the week. And then Chris Kelleher, the Wild assistant GM, director of player personnel for USA Hockey when it comes to the Four Nations face-off and the Winter Olympics coming up. He'll be coming up as well. One more hour left in the show. We'll be back here on The Fan.